What is up, my friends? We are here on another episode of Level After Next podcast, where every week we're going to be your accountability. We're going to give you the inspiration. We're going to hopefully make you laugh a little bit. And at the end, you're going to have every desire to go forth and slay. So let's do this. All right, you guys, I am here with John Graham, who is some kind of superhuman. He's actually been on a show called Superhuman, right?
That's right. With Mike Tyson. Yeah.
You guys, he is the Grandmaster Memory, 3-time USA Memory champion, an entrepreneur. You mentor high achievers and, high performers, which I love. And I can't wait to get to that piece because it's, I think, discussing the mental health aspect and the panic attacks and the anxiety that go along with not just being a high achiever, but really everyone at some point, experiences some level of anxiety. And so I can't wait to get into that because I know that it's a huge topic. But first, I want to talk about, your game shows.
Absolutely.
Why do you look so familiar to me? I'm like, did I go to high school with this guy?
There's a lot of tall, bald, bearded guys out there that are trying to look like me. So I don't know. I do look familiar to a lot I
That's so funny. I know.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually trying to figure it out. And then I had to, sit down and put my headphones on. Okay. So you said in your bio that basically you got where were you prior to 2012?
Mm-hmm.
What was happening in your life?
Yeah, prior to 2012, I was not a superhuman as I am today. Right. So I learned everything I learned about memory, like the techniques and everything I learned in 2014. I read a book. So 2012 is when I kind of had my first spiritual awakening. Like, what is going on with this world? I really want to become an entrepreneur too. I don't want to work in a cubicle. I was working out in Denver, working for a bankruptcy office, doing something I hated. I was terrible. I was absolutely terrible at being an employee. And I wanted more. Yeah, I started listening to like Tony Robbins and Esther Hicks and all these, just had them in my ear 24/7, just entrepreneurs, spiritual, knowing there was more to life. So that's where I was back then. Completely changed since then.
And how does this book, Moonwalking with Einstein, land in your lap? And why, really?
We got in trouble at that cubicle job. We were all dinking around and watching YouTube, and I was on Twitter on my phone a lot, not working. He was monitoring everything we were doing. Like, you guys got to stop. And so I closed out all my bookmarks of all my favorite websites, like, got to get to work. And there was one website I had saved called Moonwalking with Einstein, the art and science of remembering everything. I was like, I read an article about somewhere that called my soul. Like, I deleted everything but that book. And I went to Barnes & Noble, bought the book, and found out that the memory champions of the world are not people with eidetic memories or photographic memories. It's a complete myth. Savants, geniuses. There are people who have some, qualities like that. But overall, these are competitions. These are people who learned mental techniques and strategies to remember insane amounts of data. I was like, okay, cool. I want to try that. I just tried it. I just learned how to memorize a deck of cards with this strategy. I went for walks every day. I practiced with the cards until like a week later, I could memorize shuffle deck of cards in like 6 minutes. I just wanted to be cool and have like a party trick. That was it.
Challenge accepted. I like it.
Yeah, that was it. That's it. And that started me on like the whole journey of where I am today.
Well, I just think I think as fun and interesting of a story as it is, like, it was still this kind of big kapow moment, right? And then it led you down this path that you were willing to follow. And I think that's one of the most incredible things about what can happen as entrepreneurs, as humans, when we just kind of follow those little nudges or inklings, or like that thing that kept that book, as something that you wanted to look into.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's beautiful, and it's exactly what this podcast is about. So I'm just really honored that you're here to share this story with us. Is there any, before I start getting into the nuts and bolts that we should really be sharing, but I mean, like, do you have any really good stories from your travels and competitions? What was the hardest challenge you've had to do?
I've been to China 3 times. The first time was when I competed in my very first competition. And it's a 3 day, the World Memory Championships was my first competition. Like, let's go big. I had been training for like 6 months and I sat
You're like,
down
I
and
can memorize a deck of cards. I got this. Let's go
I
to
got this.
China.
Yeah, let's go to China. There's a fun story to that. My wife and I sold everything we owned to travel around the world. So that was a part of that trip.
Wow.
Um, it's like, it's in China. I'm going to go 3 days of 10 events. Like some of these events are an hour, more than an hour. They're 3 hours long. You get an hour to memorize as many decks of cards as you can in order. And you have 2 hours to write out the order. So 3 hours of sitting there. It's insane. There's 3 days, 10 events. Some of them are shorter, right? The first event, my heart was racing out of my chest. I almost got up and left. It was that bad. Probably the anxiety. It was terrible. It was terrifying. I'm just sitting there in my own head, just terrified, right? I
Yeah.
bombed that competition. Bombed, absolutely bombed. But I got to know people who, welcomed me in, who shared people that share like how they do it because they know it's hard work and training. You're not just going to naturally.
Right.
Second time, well, actually, the most recent time I was in China, so we'll keep it on China. I just got back. This was February. I was on a show called Super Brain. 400 million people watch this show. It's insane.
Yeah, it's
Super Bowl
insane.
is like nothing
That's
compared to that.
crazy. That is
Yeah.
crazy.
So I had to memorize. They had me against one of the best in China, head to head. We had 100 props from the show, random props, cards, Rubik's cubes, whatever. We had to. They brought us 2 items at a time. They put each item in a different locker. There were 100 lockers in front of us. So we had to memorize what item went in what locker number. And then they typed in a 4-digit code to lock each locker. So we had to memorize the 4-digit code for each locker, 2 at a time, in front of 400 million people. And then get quizzed on like who could type the answer the fastest at the end. Yeah.
Actually, like, I am having an anxiety attack just thinking about it. I cannot handle putting myself into this. Is why I danced. I like don't even like the anxiety of, a team relying on me. Um, but I think so then honestly, these are very stressful situations that you're putting yourself into.
Mm-hmm.
And how is that like connected now to how you're helping high achievers work through the panic attacks or the anxieties,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's just generalized or that like very pointed. If you haven't had an anxiety attacks, I know when I had my first panic attack, it was like something I I it's insane, and I didn't think they were that much different, but they are both awful in their own right, and they are, whether they're an attack or just that generalized and constant state. So I I'm just so curious, obviously we want to know what you do to help people kind of overcome that and how you found the need in this area, and to serve it, but also why are you doing this to yourself?
Right. So the reason I found this need was because I was the one suffering from anxiety and panic attacks. And they are awful because you feel like you're going to die. Like you don't feel, you're going to die. And if you've never had one, you're like, what do you mean? Like,
Right, exactly.
something is seriously wrong with you in that
Yep.
moment or that prolonged moment. So it's terrifying.
Yeah, that
Um,
was a hard thing. That was a hard thing. And I only want to touch on this for those who like to really, I don't know, validate those who've experienced it. And again, like anxiety attacks they're really, really scary and hard. Um, and I've experienced those all throughout, tingly fingers, like knowing that I'm not okay, hyperventilating kind of thing. But I had a friend who would get panic attacks and she thought she was dying all the time. And I was like, you're ridiculous.
Mhm.
You're fine. You know, you're fine. We've had your heart checked until I had a panic attack. And I mean, like it was so physical. And I was very certain that it was before my kids were going to school the first time. And I'm like, I'm dying in this bed. And it's the most terrifying and real thing. And I had no concept of what that was like until, of course, I experienced it. So if that sounds crazy to you, that's good because it means that you haven't had one yet. Let's never let you have a panic attack.
Right.
But yeah, so I mean, it is so legitimate, and it does feel like that you know that you're dying, and so yeah, like sorry to interrupt, but so you were having these,
Mhm.
and where does that kind of fall in line with your timeline as far as becoming the memory champion?
Yeah. I probably had anxiety almost well, I wouldn't say almost every day. It was chronic though, probably since I was 13. Just constantly living in my head. And I would have denied the anxiety label. I was delusional about it. But I started probably in 2016, started noticing I would like freeze up when I was competing. Like just deer in the headlight, frozen, locked in my head, just in fear. Like, what's wrong with me? Why can't I just perform? Why can't I just be in the flow, right? And it just kept happening. And I would just play it off or lie to people like, oh, like I got distracted, oh, whatever. But it just kept ramping up into more tension, more like brain fog. I was training for the 2019 World Championship and I couldn't train because I had so much brain fog. I was like, oh, I need supplements. I need to go for a walk. No. Like if I could talk to myself back then, I was like, no, it's anxiety. It's severe anxiety. It's severe stress. It's not, you're not deficient in a supplement. You don't need a bath. I mean,
Right.
bath might help, but there's something deeper internally. So I suffered for a long time and then it developed into I was having multiple daily panic attacks. So scary. I thought I was going to die.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the times the left side of my face went numb, completely numb. I thought I was having a stroke. So the whole way to the hospital, I thought I was going to just die as my brother's driving me. The whole time. Right? Like you said, there was one time where I thought I was having a heart attack because my arm tightened up, my chest tightened up. They mimic feeling like heart attacks or strokes. They're
Yeah.
terrifying.
My my the first one that I had, I from my heart all the way out to my extremities froze. And I could feel it like slowly, like my blood, everything going cold from my
Mm-hmm.
heart and chest
Mm-hmm.
all the way out. And so I just laid there going, this is it. This is what it feels like when your heart stops and I'm clearly dying. Like there's no blood in me right now. It was just, it's unreal. And the
Mm-hmm.
fact that our body is even capable of messing with us like that is,
Yeah. So I had 3 times where I went to the ER because I thought I was going to die. Called 911, right? Went with an ambulance once. And so now comes the journey of what's wrong with me. So the heart tests, the brain scans, the MRIs, everything to figure out, okay, is it brain related? Is it stroke? Is it heart? All that comes back normal. So I knew it was a panic attack. I did some research. But still, now you talk to doctors and they want to give you Xanax. They want to put you on blood pressure meds, which we know doesn't get to the depth of it. I don't,
Mhm.
and intuitively, like there's different types of people. Some people are okay managing it, taking the meds, that's okay. There's no judgment. But I was like, I don't want to manage this. I don't want to cope with it. I don't want it anymore. So I just kept going deeper. This isn't it. This isn't it. This doctor wants to, it isn't it. I want to go to the core, the root, like the real root of this. And so I found the root. I was able to work through that and do that inner work. And it's insane
Hmm.
when you realize what's causing all this. And that's what I help people do. If you are like a high performer, top performer, someone who just doesn't want to deal with this, wants to get to the root and not maintain it, not manage it, you're going to have to go to the depths of yourself. And you're going to have to feel and experience all of the things you pushed away in your life. That's what's happening. Every single experience in your life that you've ever pushed away is still inside of you. It's causing all of this disruption, this anxiety, depression, panic. And we've just been pushing it away, haven't been feeling it, seeing it, dealing with it, and it's still inside of us. So the only way is to see those parts of you, to feel those parts of you, to give them space. And so they release, so they heal and integrate. So you don't feel that visceral feeling anymore. It doesn't control you anymore.
I'm curious. So, I feel like there are a lot, especially, in every area, but of high achievers who would say, okay, yes, I know that I am experiencing anxiety. I want to fix it. I don't want to take the pills. I want my full like cognitive ability, and I just want to be good and normal and not have to feel this way all the time. But are they always prepared to do the level of like deep work? Like, do people come to you going, because it's not the same as I go to therapy and I'm like, fix me, tell me what's wrong. I'm ready for this. But you're kind of in a different space where it's like, I can help you with this. And it's, my guess is as in depth and deep and meaningful and impactful as therapy. But are they still coming to you with this understanding that like shit's about to get real?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I make sure people are committed and coachable and just really are going to take full responsibility for everything they've stored inside. Not in like, you're a bad person, you did this to yourself kind of way, but ownership of, because there's a beauty in what you're trapping inside of you. Right. And I don't take a therapy route. I don't work with people mentally and cognitively and tell them, dig, let's figure out an understanding. That can be helpful, but that doesn't touch the core. Because really, as simply put as I can, you really just need to feel all of the shit that's still inside of you. That's it. You don't need to know where it came from. You don't need to know the moment your mom did this to you, or this, you don't need to know those moments.
Yeah.
Cognitively, we want to know, like, what's the root? What's going on? But even if you understand someone was narcissistic to you or abusive, or even if someone loved you, like I never had abuse in my life, but I still
Right.
have panic attacks. How is that possible? Right? You can develop it if you're severely loved and held in your life, because then when you go out in the world, then you don't have that anymore. Right? Like there's different ranges.
Yeah.
All you have to do is be able to feel, because look, Katie, everything you've trapped inside is pain, right? And so for it to release, the only way it will release is to feel the pain. It will be pain as you let it go. So if someone's willing to do that in a safe way, the alternative is to again cope and manage and maintain where you're haunted with it your whole life and it affects you. And you repeat patterns and all that stuff. Or you can face it, lean into it, join it, and it can release.
How like what does it look like for somebody getting started? I mean, I realize this is a very like loaded question, and the best thing to do is to just get in touch with you directly. But I'm just curious, because there's so many different therapeutic ways, to really reach these places. And for me, it wasn't talk therapy. It was more inner work that ended up really helping. But as like, how would you describe kind of your mode of support, I guess?
Yeah. So there's three parts to this. that I work with people on. I keep it as simple as I can because there's a lot of programs that completely overwhelm and overload you with videos and research and all this stuff. Really simply, if you have anxiety or panic attacks, your nervous system is dysregulated. So we have to fully regulate our nervous system. And there's a lot of information out there. You could go Google and people tell you you need to yawn to activate your vagus nerve, take a bath, whatever, like cold showers. All that stuff is cool and good and helpful, but like let's do the best thing possible. That's my method. Like what's the best way to do this? So I teach a method where you're laying flat for 20, 30 minutes a day, sometimes more if it's really severe. And just surrendering the tensions, the control of your body. Because if you have anxiety and panic, you're tense. You're so tense.
Like before you said that, I'm sitting here and like realizing that like every muscle in my body is like
Yeah. So Katie,
activated.
relax your jaw, relax your forehead, relax your chest, relax your shoulders, relax your gut, and everyone listening too, relax your butt. And then just notice any other areas that are tense and just let go. This has to be a constant. This is the second thing I'll talk about in a second. But to regulate your nervous system, basically all it means is like, let's switch it off. We're always on the go. We're always busy. We're always thinking. We're always doing. That's on. It's always on, activated, draining. And the tension is holding in all these suppressed emotions too. Like you're literally holding in all the crap we want to get rid of. When you realize that, you're like, relax.
Gripping it.
Yeah. So I teach people this method, and it's got to be consistent. It's a must, like absolute must. Okay, where you're releasing control of your muscles, but you're also releasing control of your mind. Because your mind's always like, what do I need to do? Figuring things out, thinking
Yeah.
ahead.
My mind is like, there's like
Yeah.
17 different brains going.
Yeah.
Full ADHD in my head at all times.
Yeah. And that's a conditioning we all have. So we have to let that go too. So we let that go. We fully regulate our nervous system. I guide people through this. I have a track. And I don't call it, it's not a meditation. It's not focusing on your breath. Because I like to think like focus, if you're sitting there and you're focusing on your breath, that's great and all. But you're completely bypassing all of the tensions and the emotions that are there right now. So if you have anxiety specifically and you're doing a focus on your breath meditation or a guided meditation, it's calming you down, but it's bypassing all of the stuff inside of you that needs to be seen.
Yeah.
Okay.
It actually stresses me out to focus on my breath because then I'm like, am I breathing too fast or too like?
Am I doing it right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Am I doing? Yeah. So if you have anxiety, we need to feel all of that stuff. Stop focusing on a breath. Breath is bypassing. Like if you have anxiety right now, what do we do? And everyone does the opposite of what they should be doing when they have anxiety. So if you feel anxious, what do you immediately do? You find something to feel better. You go for a walk, guided meditation, a bath, grab your phone. You try to seek something to feel better. Well, you're bypassing everything that's going on inside of you. This stuff wants out. It wants to be seen. It wants to be felt and experienced. Once you fully experience it, it's gone forever. It releases forever. So we do the exact opposite. And I was too, right? So now the second part of this, I call it the unhooking method, right? So just like I relaxed you through, right? We have to stay in that relaxed state to allow the stuff to come up and process. It'll feel a little uncomfortable, right? Because we stored it as pain. It will release as pain. That's okay. So we have to relax our bodies and feel those sensations. Experience and see them. Because once you fully see them, the tension in your body, the gut, the head, wherever it is, the emotional energy, once you fully experience and process that out, it can release. And sure, there's a little bit more in there, right? But it can release. Imagine this steam releasing from you. Like not just in an hour of therapy a day, but all day long. As it's coming up, you know how to release this. It has to be, because otherwise therapy is no good.
Right.
None of this is any good because you're just doing it you're meditating for 30 minutes a day and the rest of the day is chaos and you're repeating the patterns that are
Right.
holding it in.
It's just like taking a pill.
Sure.
Like it's just putting it off.
Exactly. So it's all bypassing. That's why the managing and coping and medications and stuff, even guided meditations, is bypassing that anxiety. All this suppressed emotions. And by the way, it's not just anxiety you're holding on to, it's sadness, it's anger, it's fear underneath that anxiety. It's a cocktail.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the second thing, is knowing how to handle that as it comes up throughout the day. The third thing I teach, I call it catalyst integration. So catalyst meaning events in your life during your day that cause a reaction that you feel,
Right.
that sizzle.
Right.
Taking those moments, and how do we release those? Because most of those moments, like if you get cut off in traffic, you feel in a rush of anger, or something causes you to paralyze in fear, like you described earlier, your whole chest to your arms experience,
Mm-hmm.
right? That is indicating that something inside of you wants out, wants to be seen and felt. There's boulders from our life, from when we were 5 years old, 12 years old, 15, doesn't matter. You don't need to know when it happened, what happened.
Right.
You take those moments from your day, like today, or the people that bother you today, and I guide you through a process to fully feel those and release those moments, those boulders inside of you that are haunting you. These are the moments that keep you up at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
Like, you're not thinking about them. You're not thinking about when you were 5. But like, if I'm at my laptop and I'm 37 years old and I get an email that I don't like reading, right? You open the email and it agitates you. You are not anxious because of that email. You are anxious because of something inside of you that got poked. So that email did not cause your anxiety. It's actually serving you, because it's a mirror to show you there's something inside of you
Right.
that needs to be seen here. So I guide people through that process to release that. And once you do this, you dissolve that connection, that panic connection between your amygdala and your nervous system. It dissolves. You release this anxiety. You don't feel the heaviness. So it just goes. And you feel more at peace, more present.
I mean, essentially, just knowing my own journey with anxiety and panic, and assuming that plenty of the people who come to you have kind of similar experiences. I mean, a lot of times they've lived in fight or flight, I would guess, almost constantly for a long time, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is like not only life-changing stuff, and especially when you kind of understand the impact of living in that state of, even when you think that things are okay, you're still on, you're still stressed out. You're not, the brain fog is because you're constantly in that fight or flight activation, and you can't access the portions of your brain to help you reason or
Mm-hmm.
and so the relief that people have to get from this, I would imagine, is almost miraculous,
Mm-hmm.
whether they're expecting that or not. I am fascinated, and I don't know the right word. I just think it's beautiful that you've found a way to help in this way that is outside of where people would normally think that they need to seek that. I think that this is one of the most incredible pieces of what I get to do in podcasting, is meet people like you who have found these things, but then who are also, putting them into action and helping other people. What do you see as the results, for those who come and work with you? Where are some of them? Like, are they I assume that this is kind of a practice that they can then carry on and take on with themselves. But is there like a graduation type moment? And, what kind of results are you seeing with those who you're working with?
Yeah, this is a very self-empowering process where you don't need to go to someone. Like, you don't need to come to me for 10 years. You can learn how to guide yourself through this and hold yourself through this. And I don't want you with me for years. I don't want to be teaching and coaching, and that's not even what I do. I empower people to do it themselves because you are the only person who can do it.
Yeah.
I can't do it for you, and I can't feel these things for you and release these things. So the process, I had a client recently, like when you talk about results, this woman had been depressed for 6 years. She told me she had never had 3 days in a row in those 6 years where she felt good. 3 days in a row was the most she had ever felt good in those 6 years. And she said, I worked with you for 1 week, John, and it wasn't working. It was actually getting worse. She said, I rewatched that unhooking, like again. It's like, I need to follow it to a T. And she followed it to a T for a week. And she had a moment where she completely unhooked from that, what was holding her. Because sometimes it's something that's anchoring us in that feeling, an attachment to something that she realized on her own. I didn't coach her through it or dig. She figured that out on her own and released it. And I still talk to her today. This was back in December. For the last, 6 months, she's felt amazing every day.
Hmm.
She has her life back. And it wasn't because of me. It was because I guided her through why she was feeling this way and what she could do about it.
Right.
And that's for the people who are willing to dive into this, because you're not going to want to do this, by the way. The moment you have anxiety, you are going to want to scroll on your phone. I guarantee it, because I remember. It's hard. It's hard either way. But initially, if you can persevere in this, I can guarantee you will release this stuff from you. Just like it does for so many people. I've helped 5 people that I know of through suicide, through suicidal thoughts and ideations. And I don't say that light. I had a grandpa commit suicide. So I know the impact. But this stuff saves lives because you empower someone to do it and help them move through it. Know how. Why am I stuck here? Why are these mental techniques not working? What's the real root, and what can I do about it?
So as far as like learning more from you, I know that you have a website is releasepanic.com, is that right?
Yeah.
And then a YouTube channel, I believe.
Yep. You can look up John Graham, US Memory Champion, and you'll find it. I do
Awesome.
have a free training for people if they're interested, right? I created a video, how to release your anxiety forever. And if you go to releasepanic.com/free, you can look that up.
Perfect. I will be
Grab that
putting
video.
that
So yeah,
in my stories.
releasepanic.com/free.
Okay, cool. And listen, you guys, my listeners who I love so much, we will obviously be linking everything in the show notes. And so people are able to check out, your free offering. And then is it a course, or do they, work with you as a kind of like a coach? Is it one-on-one?
Yeah, so if people are interested in working with me, I want to make sure you're committed first off, right? Just a coachable person. I have an 8-week transformational process where I guide you through those 3 things: the full regulation, those tracks, the unhooking method, the catalyst integration to release this stuff for good, panic attacks, daily anxiety. So it's guided where every week there's a new module. Most time it's 15 to 30 minutes. It's really short and sweet and simple because it needs to be. And then every week I do a coaching call where you hop on the Zoom and I'm right there to guide you through anything that you need. So it's completely guided to kind of instill it in you.
Yeah.
It takes, just like the client I was telling you about, Rachel. It took like a week before it really sunk in, and she was
Right.
very committed to it. So if you're that type of person, you can go to releasepanic.com and look up those details.
I love it. And as always happens, I've figured out, what our business venture will be together.
There you go.
Because that's what my head always does.
Hmm.
You have 3 little baby girls, one on the way. Is that right?
I will have a third on the way in June. Yeah. Yeah.
I what I keep kind of like keeps coming to my head because I have my children. I mean, they're my children, and I have always had anxiety, and I do my best not to give that to them, but I also recognize it in them the way that it wasn't easily recognized in me. And so I just like throughout this, knowing that you've got these little, little ones growing, how beautiful it is that they get to have. And I think especially a father who is so in tune and understanding, but just anybody, I think one of the biggest things I can do, and it was actually last night that I sat with my daughter and was like, I understand, like because my anxiety, and I had amazing parents. I had a beautiful childhood. So this is not a complaint. If mom, if you are listening, I love you. You're amazing. You just don't have anxiety. And I don't know what that's like. Um, but like, sometimes all I can do is just validate her, but I'm desperately wanting to help her not have to struggle with this her whole life. So I think it's really cool that you have these tools to kind of ingrain in your children and my guess is that you probably do it naturally without even,
You
you know,
embody it. Yeah. And
yeah,
that's the
like,
thing. Yeah. Any parent out there who has the same fears, and I don't say this to scare anybody, but they unconsciously pick up these patterns and these same
absolutely.
things, anxieties from us. And the best way is not to learn some technique to what to talk to them about or to teach them. It's to embody it yourself, where you are facing and holding space for yourself. Because if you can hold space for yourself enough to heal where you're not reactive, or it's not even reactive, but conditioned, then they won't be. Then you'll
Yeah.
understand how to lead them through. They will just, it'll break a pattern and they will embody it too. So that's the initiative I took. I took responsibility of like, I'm not going to talk and teach them how to do this. I'm going to do it myself and hold space for myself so I can do it for my wife and my 3 daughters. Because that's what girls need. They need a father, a masculine figure who's grounded and safe emotionally, who's not always reactive. And I'm not perfect, by the way,
Right.
but someone who can hold space for their emotions, let them get it out in a safe way where I'm not telling them to stop or stop crying or putting on this TV show because I can't deal with their emotions. Men out there need your wife, your girls are not a burden. If their emotions are a burden to you, then you're not safe for them.
Yeah.
And you're also not safe for yourself. And I don't say that as a judgment, because again,
Right.
I understand what that's like. I was on that side. But if you release and deal with the stuff inside of you, you can hold space not just for yourself, but for the women and the men in your life.
And I know that we're kind of coming to a close here, and I know that I still have like 8 trillion questions that I could
Sure.
ask you, but do you feel like it's often just some form of trigger, because it is hard oftentimes for even my dad, who is one of my very best friends, like he can't handle when I'm crying, like he can't handle it. I think it like physically pains him, but it's almost like he'll get angry, and I know he's not angry with me, and I'm like, just let me cry, dad. But it would make sense to me that it is like some form of trigger, and that needs to be released, kind of like what you said earlier. So I think that I don't know, I think that such a huge gift to children for parents to be able to like find these things, work through them. And then, like you said, it's almost like we almost hand these skills down um, without even having to necessarily teach them. But I'd still like to write a parenting book on this with you.
Let's do it. Yeah, or a video, a series, yeah. Like, let's
Yeah.
give that example. If you don't mind, I'll talk about your dad as if it was me, because like
Yeah.
I know what that feels like to have a screaming child, a baby, my own baby, where I can't handle it. I feel the tension, I feel the anger. Like, why won't you just settle down? I've got stuff to do, right? It's a visceral internal feeling in me. That means, again, the baby is not causing that. It's something inside of me that's unresolved, that has not been seen and felt. So if my parents did the same thing with me, I have all this stuff inside of me, right? So it's screaming to get out. For a father, you have to sit with that feeling in a relaxed manner and feel that feeling. Don't push it away. Don't shut it down. Don't argue with it. Don't try to talk through it. You let go of your mind and you just feel that experience. And as you do that, this stuff releases so that the next time your baby's screaming and crying, you can hold space. You are calm. You are not feeling that internally. That's what I mean by grounded, safe emotionally as a man. Because if you're feeling triggered and frustrated all the time, your daughter can't express her emotions because you can't handle them. And so what
Yeah.
does she do? She holds it in and she keeps trapping all this stuff. That's how we just unconsciously condition. If we can't be a safe, if you can't sit there, and again, no judgment, this is not a good or bad, this just
Right.
is what it is. If we're not able to sit there and I have my 4-year-old screaming at me, frustrated, and if I can't be safe and calm and present with her and just let her get it out, if I shut her down or yell at her or like stop that or watch this show, she's going to bypass all that energy and it's going to store inside of her instead of just going through her. Because you've seen kids, you have kids, like they'll scream their head off for 10 seconds and then literally run off in joy 10 seconds later. Like
Yeah.
that quick of a release. That's what we're designed to do. That's how we're supposed to handle it. I mean, I don't want you throwing tantrums when you're grocery shopping.
Right.
It's releasing, but like you get the idea. Like that stuff needs to
Yeah.
process.
Yeah. Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Well, you're changing the world, and I can't wait to get to
Thank you.
learn more from you, share more of you, um, work with you. Cause I mean, we've got a plan now, but I
Yeah,
feel like
you got a
it
point.
is so, it's so important. And, not just to help people get through parenting, but to be able and to feel better about who they get to be as parents, but then to also just, I think we all worry that we're not supporting our kids enough. So I would love to just examine this direction with you a little bit. And I appreciate you coming on so much.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll get to have you on again. And John, you are just really, really cool. And I'm pretty sure you're not just a doppelganger. I feel like I do recognize you for something.
Maybe
But
it's
I haven't watched television in like 12 years, so I don't know if it's that.
again, we're probably soul family
Yep.
somehow. There's a connection there. But yeah, I appreciate you
Okay.
asking the real questions of what you're doing is saving the world too, because you're willing to go there and bring people on like myself to open up and share. Even if it changes one life, it has
Yeah.
changed the world. It ripples out into their kids, into their generations, into their life, into their friends. Like that's massive. So let's do more
Thank
of
you.
that.
Yes, absolutely. It's just an honor to get to share individuals like yourself. And I appreciate you so much and look forward to talking with you some more. Thank you
Yeah,
so much.
let's do it. Thank you.
All right, there it is there. Thank you so much for joining us today on Level After Next podcast. Go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss anything. Or if you really don't want to have any FOMO, head over to levelafternext.org where you can catch up with all the things. Peace out.